Ready if you are, sir.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Another great crowd. So we're going to start our second, I guess this would be our second public ad hoc committee meeting, correct?
Second or third, I think.
Third?
Actually. Yeah.
Third.
They all blend together.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, tonight we have an agenda put out. I think you can see it, you saw it at the front door. So anyway, we look forward to a lively informational night tonight. And Karen, would you like to?
Yes, just to get the protocol of the evening started, we're going to have a presentation, and I believe we want to hold questions until the end of that. But I would also like respectfully, please, if you're going to make comments, come up to the podium and make them into the microphone, because we are on Zoom and they won't be recorded if you're not at the podium. So I think that's about it right now. And this is going to be a great listening session tonight, and it's also going to recap where we've been so far and what we've heard. So Marnie is going to do a PowerPoint for us.
I think, Marnie, what is it? You have about a 45-minute presentation, Marnie, or half an hour?
Between, yeah,
About
30 and 40 minutes is the goal.
And then the rest of the evening will be left for public comment, and
Yes.
that's where we can share our ideas. Brandon?
That's great. Yes, while Marnie's pulling that up, I'll just a brief introduction. First, thank you to everyone for coming tonight. Thank you to our ad hoc committee. Thank you to the staff and, of course, the public. Also want to welcome our partners from EMC who are helping the city with this endeavor. A couple housekeeping items. If you haven't signed up, we have an email list up here. You can sign up for information. We do use our constant contact service for sending out blasts about the housing element update. So please do sign up if you'd like to stay tuned on what's going on there. Tonight we're going to cover a few topics. As Councilmember Richards alluded to, we're going to have a lot shorter presentation this time. Last time we spent a lot of time on the PowerPoint because we're still in the education phase, and of course we still are, but we're going to be transitioning and hoping that people are going to self-serve if they haven't been in these earlier meetings now and go to the website and learn more. We're going to focus more on topics now as we go through these meetings. So the presentation should be a little more streamlined, and as Councilmember Richards said, we're going to get to that public comment much sooner this time. We're going to talk about the goals and policies of the program, learn a little bit about what happened in the fifth cycle, and then get to that public comment. So with that, I'll turn it over to the city's principal planner, Marnie Waffle.
And
Thank you.
just a second, this is Anastasia, who is with EMC Planning Group, who is our consultant to write the housing element. And I believe Andy will be on Zoom. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Councilmember. Yeah,
Andy
Andy
was
Flower
here
is
last time.
on as well.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening, whether you're in person or on Zoom. This is our third public workshop on the housing element update. And we're really looking forward to sharing some more information with you this evening. As was mentioned, to my right here is Anastasia Aziz. She's part of the EMC team that is assisting us with our housing element update. We have additional team members on Zoom, Andy Flower, Kylie Pope, and Kaylin also, and they'll be participating in portions of the presentation this evening as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I am going to go somewhat quickly just because we do want to leave as much time as we can for public comment. So our agenda for tonight is to watch the Housing Element Explainer video. This is also posted on our website, so you can access it there as well. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished to date with respect to this housing element update. We're going to review our timeline, what we've heard from the community so far. We're going to unveil our new website, which is Home Carmel-by-the-Sea. And HOME stands for Housing Opportunities Made Easier. We're also going to do a quick review of the 5th cycle goals, policies, and programs, because this is going to inform the goals and policies for our 6th cycle update. And then we're going to receive public comment. So again, our Housing Ad Hoc Committee, Mayor Pro Tem Bobby Richards and Councilmember Karen Ferlito, they are our Housing Ad Hoc Committee, and their mission statement is to provide guidance as the city updates the housing element of its general plan. They will participate in public outreach and education, consider opportunities and incentives for the development of affordable housing, and explore creative, tailored solutions to meet the city's workforce and range of other housing needs while preserving the unique character of Carmel-by-the-Sea. So now we're going to show the video.
I think you forgot to do the enable sound when you shared your screen. I almost had it. Hold on a second.
So close. We did practice this.
Okay, so stop it and then let's stop the share. Okay, now share your screen again.
Technical difficulties.
And then share sound.
This is what it's like at my home, except my husband has this cyberkinetic field that stops all communications on the computer and yells, "Karen!"
It's the foundation for a thriving, quality life.
As our children grow,
as we add more jobs,
as our workers retire,
We need to make sure we have various housing options to accommodate the changing demographics and housing needs in our community.
We want to be a place where all of our community members can find safe and quality homes.
However, in the last decade,
for many people like seniors,
First-time home buyers,
and people with disabilities,
It's been hard to find housing that works best for their circumstance.
Additionally, many essential workers like teachers, firefighters, and nurses have been struggling to find housing that meets their income levels.
As a result, we're living in communities further away,
leading us to drive further distances,
adding to air pollution and traffic congestion,
and leading to less time spent with our own families.
to ensure our community can meet the varying housing needs and provide fair, accessible options for all.
California law requires that all cities and counties prepare a local plan for creating new homes and meet the housing needs for all members of the community.
These local plans
Are known as housing elements.
a housing element is an important step in ensuring that every Californian has a place to call home.
It also lays the foundation for housing policies for the next decade.
It is very important that we as a community develop our own housing plan.
One that is reflective of our current and future needs and complies with state law.
In the end, if we don't have a housing element that's compliant with state law, we could be sued, lose funding opportunities, and not have a say where new housing goes.
Figuring out the best way to meet our community's housing needs is a big part of creating the housing element.
Keep watching to learn more about the housing element process so that you can get involved.
The development of a housing element has many key phases. It starts with California preparing growth projections for regions across the state. It is necessary to consider housing needs at the regional level because many people live in one city and work in another, with people from the same household sometimes even working in different places. To determine how much housing each region needs, the state considers the number of existing and expected new jobs in a region, how crowded existing homes are, and how much it costs to buy or rent. These estimated housing needs are also broken down by household income groups, such as lower income, moderate income, and above moderate income levels, to help ensure there is enough housing that is affordable to people of different means. Once the state has projected regional housing needs, regional agencies made up of a group of local governments come together to find a way to allocate how much housing each jurisdiction needs to plan for. This is called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, pronounced RHNA for short. local and regional governments consider what areas are most in need of new housing based on location of jobs and how difficult and expensive it is to find housing, affirmatively furthering fair housing. Once a local government has received their RHNA, a local government will start to evaluate existing strategies, land, and demographics, and develop new policies, programs, and land uses that help address current needs and facilitate the creation of new homes to meet the new housing needs or RHNA goals. Some California cities no longer have large areas of undeveloped land, so they must consider how they can allow for more homes or a mix of uses on land that are currently host to things like empty parking lots, vacant industrial buildings, or strip malls. Other strategies include allowing more types of housing, such as cottage homes, smaller single-family homes, townhomes, apartment units, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, and ADUs, which are sometimes referred to as granny flats. An important step in the development of your housing element is to analyze the way housing decisions will affect fair housing issues. Everyone deserves a place to call home, regardless of the race or ethnicity, nationality, religion, age, income level, sexual orientation, or gender expression. Housing plans must help protect people from being wrongly discriminated against for housing opportunities and must also make sure that new homes, especially affordable homes, are being located fairly so that all residents have access to good educational and economic opportunities. In other words, good schools, jobs, and transportation services. Historically, the U.S. and California have fallen far short of these ideals, which is why local governments must now very carefully consider how to ensure fairness going forward. To do that, communities need to consider how and where people may have been unfairly discriminated against in the past, check that new plans don't make these issues worse, and make sure the new plans actually help solve these problems. While the housing element does not guarantee that housing will be built, it is an important stepping stone to ensure we have strategies and incentives in place that support and encourage housing that provides access to good schools, jobs, parks, and transportation. However, developing a housing element demands answering a lot of different questions, and finding these answers can be a lot easier with the input and feedback of people who know and care about their cities. Let's work together to figure out the best approaches and areas for providing homes to everyone who lives in our community. Contact your local planning department or elected officials for more information on the housing element.
Who put that video out, Arnie?
HCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development. All right, I think I am back here. So just really quickly, how we got to the 349 units that we're planning for the sixth cycle. So the state of California determined that we need 2.5 million homes statewide. Of that are the AMBAG region, so our local Monterey County and Santa Cruz County were given a share of 33,000 units. And then AMBAG divided those up among the local cities and counties. And Carmel-by-the-Sea's allocation is for 349 units. So we also wanted to mention this evening, believe it or not, the state is already starting the seventh cycle. So we're in the fifth cycle, we're working on getting a housing plan for the sixth cycle, and they're already planning for the seventh cycle. So if you want to be involved in those conversations, they are starting now. The state has put out a 10 to 15 minute survey on their website. The survey is a bit technical, so you might see some terms and phrases that you're not familiar with, but if you're interested, We encourage you to take a look at it. Anything that doesn't make sense to you, feel free to skip over. They do give you an option to leave comments, so it's not just, a multiple choice kind of survey. So if you have ideas, you have thoughts, the state is open to receiving them right now.
And Marnie, I want to jump in if I could. I'm sorry, I won't do this again, I promise. But I just want to also let people know that we have kind of a unique opportunity. One of our city council members is on the executive committee for the California League of Cities, Mayor Dave Potter. He represents our region, has for many years. He's constantly, out there in these meetings. He's got his finger on the pulse of this, and he encourages anybody that wants to get involved in talking about the next cycle, or even if you have questions about this one, what's going on in Sacramento. He's got meetings coming up in 2 weeks. He's going to be up there for one. So he encourages folks to reach out to him directly, just because we do have someone on the executive committee for the California League of Cities.
And I might say that the California League of Cities website has a lot of vast information. Today I pulled up their 2020 blueprint for more housing. It's very, very interesting. And Cal Cities lobbies on the benefit of all cities in California, so it's a really good site to go to and see what's going on and what they're watching for.
Now, we formed our Housing Ad Hoc Committee in, I think it was around October of 2022. Since then, we've completed a feasibility study in partnership with Echo Northwest that's starting to look at, the demographics in the village as well as potential future housing sites. We've entered into a consulting services agreement with EMC Planning Group. They're going to be a tremendous help to us as we go forward. We've conducted 2 community meetings with robust outreach. This is our third, and there will be more as we proceed. And then we've also developed a dedicated project website. We've been uploading information to the city's website, but this evening you're actually going to see a brand new website that has been created specifically for this update effort. So other efforts that are currently underway, we're reviewing the 5th cycle goals, policies, and programs, and that's what we want to talk to you about this evening and get some feedback on. We're also starting to build upon that feasibility study to identify sites that can accommodate new housing units. We're also planning for our next community meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for May, and once we firm up that date, we will be sure to let everyone know. And then we're also starting to explore possible zoning code updates. And so we wanted to just talk really briefly about the difference between zoning code updates and rezoning, because these are both terms that we've been using and will continue to use kind of throughout this process. So rezoning is changing the land use designation of a parcel of land. The map that you see here on the screen is our zoning map, and you can see a variety of colors. So rezoning is actually changing the colors on the zoning map. So if red is commercial and it changes to yellow, it's changing to residential. So that's what we mean when we say rezoning. That is different than a zoning code update, which involves looking at the municipal code and our development standards, our parking requirements, our setbacks, and seeing if there's some adjustments that we can make to those standards to help facilitate the development of housing. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Kaylin to present this slide.
All right, thank you so much for that, Marnie. So pretty much the housing element update process, what is it? What is it not? Okay, so the elephant in the room here is AFFH, or affirmatively furthering fair housing. What that is not is just coming in and completely eradicating the character and charm of Carmel, but rather creating a more inclusive Carmel that's attractive and affordable to everyone across race, socioeconomic background, demographic, what have you. So with this 6th cycle housing element update, It presents itself as a great opportunity to come up with creative solutions for Carmel that are by Carmel residents for Carmel residents. So really, the citizens of Carmel would have more local control in being able to actually go from beginning to end throughout the planning process. So it can provide new development opportunities while growing and enhancing the charm of Carmel-by-the-Sea. So in terms of what's necessary for success, the first on the list is radical transparency throughout the entire process. What that means is from beginning to end, citizens of Carmel are involved and they have a say throughout the entire drafting of the 6th cycle element. So it also fosters courageous creativity, so coming up with creative solutions. At the last meeting, someone mentioned the idea of hotel to workforce conversion. That's a creative solution. Also, it permits timely engagement and responsiveness, so back to that radical transparency idea, in addition to being backed by data and analysis that does come from HCD. And so pretty much this is, as we saw in the video, what affirmatively furthering fair housing looks like. We're not expecting any great changes overnight, but rather incremental steps that allow for more inclusivity. So that's something to keep in mind throughout this entire planning process and throughout this entire housing element update process.
Great, thank you, Caitlin.
Wait, before we go on, can everybody in the audience see this, or would it be better if we dimmed the lights?
Can't see it at all.
Okay. I was wondering about that. Is that better? Okay, great.
That's a little better. Okay, so revisiting our timeline. So again, we've completed the housing feasibility study and we've entered into our consultant contract. Right now, we're just in the heart of community outreach, starting to develop programs, collaborating with HCD. Over the summer, there will be a 30-day public review period on the draft document. We are required to also take 2 weeks to respond to any public comments that we get during that 30-day period. And then we'll be submitting the draft housing element to HCD, and they have 90 days to review and provide feedback to us. While they're doing that, we anticipate starting some of the environmental review that we need to do, as well as updating our safety element. We hope to get comments back from HCD in the fall, incorporate any comments that they give us, and then have our adoption hearings with the Planning Commission and City Council, ultimately with the goal of resubmitting to HCD by December 15th with a document that they can certify. So we're keeping track. Everything that we've heard at the prior 2 community meetings, we are keeping track of and we are revisiting. We are incorporating these comments into our new website. So we really want the community to know that we do hear you and we do understand the concerns. And we will be taking all of those into consideration as we go forward. We know that water is a big issue, but we also know that we have to move forward with a housing plan, assuming that water will come online to serve these units. So again, more comments, encouraging ADUs. We've had great response from the community with interest in ADUs. We continue to get permit applications on a regular basis, so that will be part of our housing plan going forward. And we're going to talk tonight about our new website, which is going to be sort of a landing place for all ideas. People can go online, they can post all of your ideas, you can review the ideas that other people are sharing as well.
And Marnie, you might want to say you don't have to attach your name to that. If you have an idea and you don't want to put your name on it, it's anonymous.
Yeah, you can post comments anonymously if you'd like to, absolutely. And so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Kylie, who's going to walk us through the new website.
Thank you, Marnie. Just one moment.
We can't hear.
Doesn't look like I have sharing accessibility.
Try it now, Kylie.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So
And
I
if you,
present
Kylie,
to
can you please make sure to get as close to your microphone as possible? It's a little difficult to hear you in here.
Yes, can you hear me better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Beautiful. So I present to you your housing element website. So housing opportunities made easier. That is the slogan for this housing element update. So this website is where you'll find all updates throughout this year-long planning process. So this is your landing page or your home page. So I'm just going to do a quick demo. I'm not going to go through all of the bells and whistles. I just want to make sure that everyone is familiar with how to access information on this website. So as you can see here, whenever there's a public meeting coming up or community meeting, details will be posted on the front page. And then there will be buttons to enable you to get full meeting details. There will be a link off to find the meeting agenda and all appropriate and relative materials.
Kylie, it disappeared.
Oh.
Was that?
Hold on.
It was up there. That was mine. It wasn't. Oh, okay. There we go. Sebastian's got it. Thank you, Sebastian.
We're good?
You're good. Carry on.
Okay. So I'm just going to take you back to the home page. And so right here in this white box, it's just going to give you a general rundown of what this housing element process entails, the city's RENA number, and then we have a button here that's housing element basics. And so then on this page, you're generally just going to find some information on Housing Elements 101, what this housing element update entails, how you can be involved. One thing I want to be sure to show you is our property owner interest form. This is for property owners that may be interested in future development and helping us find a solution to providing additional housing units in the city. And so if this is something that you think interests you, there's a form here. It's only a couple of questions. Feel free to give this a look at your own time. And then if we continue to go down the page, we have a couple of different headings like milestone tasks throughout this planning process. We have some information on affirmatively furthering fair housing and resources to inform you all on this matter. And then at the very bottom, there's a comments and questions box. And this is available for anyone who just wants to let us know feedback on how the website's set up, if something's not accessible, if you can't find something, if you have a question about the housing element process, anything of the like. And then I kind of want to go back and point to what Brandon mentioned about anything you do on our website, you can do it anonymously. You will be asked for an email and your screen name, but you can type in anonymous and it'll just take that. It doesn't have to be any kind of formal information there.
What about your email?
Your email will be recorded just on here, but it doesn't show it for the public. Okay. So it'll just be on the back end. Yeah. Thanks. Yep. And then you do have the ability to register if you'd like, and that's just going to help us keep you in the back end of our system so we can send out any kind of newsletter information if you'd like. It's not at all required. And then I want to point you to this right-hand column. There's some important information here. We have a quick poll, and once you click one of these, so how prepared do you feel to engage in the process? Maybe I need more information, I'll submit it, and it'll show you results on how many people have voted and what that looks like. Anytime you engage on the site, you will have an option to share. So that's pretty interesting. If you found it to be useful, you can email it to your friend, share it on Facebook, whatever you like. And then there's a couple of other important links here. So the housing element video that Marnie shared for us earlier is linked here. Again, the property owner interest form. And then we have a list of FAQs. Milestones on the right side, and this will be updated as we make our way through the planning process. And then, of course, who's listening, we have information for people that you're able to reach out to regarding any questions as well. So I'll just take you back to the home page. And then just a few highlight pages. So we were just on the housing element basics page, public meetings and workshops. This is a pretty important one. Like I said, we'll have upcoming meetings posted on the first page, the home page, so that way it's readily available and you're made aware. And then on this page, you'll see a list of all the meetings, including past meetings. So we have the first and the second community meetings, and we'll be sure to update with the presentation slides and also a recording of the meeting in case you missed it. So no pressure if you're not able to make one. We've got all the info you need right here. And then on the right-hand column, you'll see some of the links that I showed you on the previous page, and this is kind of standard as we go throughout the site. We have a resources page, which is just gonna list resources that are also located on the city's website, AMBAG's website, and then also Housing and Community Development's website. And then here's more information on, having a say in what the 7th cycle housing element RENA might look like. Information right here for a webinar, presentation slides, and then also a survey, the one that Marnie mentioned earlier. And in the right-hand corner here, we've gone ahead and selected some resources that are posted on these 3 websites, being AMBAG, HCD, and also the city. So that way you can kind of pop in and see, what we're finding to be relative to this planning process with the 6th cycle housing element update. Then I'm going to show you one more page, and then the rest is up to you guys. Oh, so this is the property owner interest form, which we already kind of took a peek at. But just so you're aware, these are kind of the main pages we want to point you to. And then also you have your nav bar up here, which just is another place to find those pages. But I want to make sure I point you to the community ideas board, which there's going to be a slide on next in Marnie's presentation. Just so you guys are familiar, we want to think of this page as an opportunity to pin a virtual sticky note. So any ideas that you may have, kind of speaking to the creative solutions that Kaylin was talking about, you're able to add them here. These are all ideas that were already submitted in the last 2 community meetings, and also a couple that were submitted via email to the city that I've gone ahead and uploaded, so that way everyone can have, a quick look at what people are thinking, kind of get a temperature read for what's going on in your community and how others around you are feeling about this housing element update or creative solutions that they're throwing out there. And you do have the ability to share the comment, to add your own comment to it, or to like it. And if you'd like to add your own idea, you don't see something here that fits what you're thinking, you can click here, type in whatever you'd like. That would just be your title, and then a short description. And again, you have that requirement to enter an email, and then a screen name, which again can be anonymous user. If you'd like to be bold, you can share your credentials. It's up to you. And then one other cool thing is you're able to search. So if you think that parking is really important to you, you can just kind of see, has anyone else talked about parking? And you can kind of see what the conversation looks like there. So that's all I'm going to show you. I think I've kind of given you a rundown of what's most important. The rest is up to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Well, that's very user friendly, it seems like. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our first time seeing it too, so it's exciting to actually see some useful areas to go to. And we have to thank Brandon for coming up with home. That was his idea.
But this is exactly what we're looking for, a place where we can share ideas and build on one another's information. Thanks.
All right, Marnie, why don't you take you over back with your presentation, the 5 minutes you got left or so?
I will try. It might take me 5 minutes to navigate back to my presentation. I'm so sorry.
Share screen there.
Share.
There you go.
Sorry, bear with me. I'm not. There it is. Fantastic. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you.
And that lives, Marnie, where does that live? On our website, on our city website?
So we will put a link on our website to the new website, but here you can see what our URL is. So it's www.home.carmel-by-the-sea.com.
Okay.
So that's where you can find this website, and of course we'll be including it going forward in all of our communications. So we're really excited about this this ideas feature, and we really encourage you to go online and share your ideas with us. Of course, you're also welcome to email us directly. We want to provide as many opportunities that are easy for you to give us your ideas.
Arnie, excuse me, but for some reason at home, we're not seeing that on the large screen. We're not seeing your presentation currently.
Is that at home? Is that?
That's it. We see it now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andy.
Oh. Like, where is that? Awesome.
All right, go ahead, Marnie.
It seems to be frozen. Just probably me. There we are. Okay. So now we're going to go into the goals, policies, and programs, and this is going to be pretty high level. We're not going to go through all of them. It might actually put you to sleep. The important thing to know is that our housing element includes goals, policies, and programs that go beyond just constructing the RHNA. So that is definitely a huge component of the document, but there are other components to it as well that further housing services in our community. So this is just a very basic kind of diagram that shows you how the housing element is set up. We start with goals. We have 5 of them in our current document, and then those goals are broken down into policies. The policies are further broken down into programs, and then we develop objectives on how we're going to implement those programs. So the state does require that we include certain components, and so our programs must identify who is responsible for implementing the program, the time frame in which the program will be carried out, the funding source of the program, a quantified objective, as well as a performance metric. So they really want us to be very specific about the goals and how we're going to implement these programs to further our goals. So I'm going to walk you through just one. This is a current goal in our 5th cycle housing element, and it's to preserve existing residential units and encourage the development of new multifamily housing, specifically in the commercial and the R4 districts. So that's the goal. The policy is to encourage mixed-use developments, second floor housing over first floor commercial as a preferred development form, contributing to the village character in all commercial districts. The program that implements this policy, one of them, is to preserve and increase second floor residential uses. The objective was to preserve and increase 5 units over the 5th cycle, which was 2015 to 2023. So how did we meet this objective? Well, the Carmel Municipal Code has certain sections that speak to preservation of second floor residential units. One section says that an existing residential dwelling unit cannot be converted or demolished unless it is replaced. So that fits the category of preservation of existing units. We also require that all newly constructed second-story floor area include residential dwellings. So if you're building a second floor on a commercial building, it must be for residential use. The third code section talks about no existing residential dwelling occupying a floor space shall be converted to any commercial use. So these are 3 zoning code requirements that further preservation and encourage second floor residential units.
And
so
just remember, this is in our 5th cycle now. So we're building on that.
So how else did we meet this objective? So city staff reviews building permit applications, both for interior remodels of commercial buildings. We also verify the occupancy of existing second floor space, all for the purpose of just ensuring that if there is an existing residential unit, that unit is preserved. We regularly encourage the creation of second floor apartments. We also work cooperatively with building owners to establish residential units, and then also educating them on the preservation of existing housing. And these are things that the planning staff does on a daily basis as we're engaging with the public and answering questions and reviewing plans and permits. So again, how did we meet this objective? Well, here's some specific examples. The Broche building on Dolores added an apartment unit. The Derling building on Ocean also added an apartment unit. The Hakeem building on Dolores, which is the former Jean Deleuze space, has been approved for the construction of 3 apartments. Those obviously aren't online yet, but they have secured entitlements for that project. The Goodhue Fink building, also known as Cantonetta Luca on Dolores, also added a condominium unit. And then Great Valley Holdings is the new building across from the post office on 5th Avenue. And in the reconstruction of that building, they added 2 apartments upstairs. So our goal during the 5th cycle was to preserve or increase 5 units, and actually 8 units were created. So this is a huge success, and it really requires a partnership with the community. The city's not building these units. We're relying on, property owners and developers, and our job is to help facilitate these developments. So this was definitely a success. So this might be an example of a program that we carry over into the 6th cycle, and we set new goals for ourselves to achieve those policies. So again, I mentioned we have 5 goals in our housing element. I'm not going to go through these in great detail, but just want to give you a sense for some of the other topics that they cover beyond just building new housing. So the programs address housing rehabilitation and housing maintenance, incentives for mixed-use development, and as we talked about, preserving second-floor residential uses. This goal here really speaks to kind of our arena, so identifying sites that can accommodate the range of housing types under that number that has been given to us by the state. Also protecting the stability of residential neighborhoods. So there are programs to encourage year-round occupancy, ensure neighborhood compatibility. And then the 5th program, or the 5th goal, preserving and increasing the supply of housing for lower and moderate income households, as well as seniors and other special needs groups, and then ensuring that there isn't any discrimination in the sale or rental of housing. Goal number 5 is probably the most robust goal we currently have in our housing element. So there are a number of policies and programs kind of under that umbrella. It includes things like encouraging private sector development, reducing governmental constraints, and then also supporting energy and water conservation. These are really important topics to consider when we're talking about new housing units or even existing housing. So at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Andy, who's gonna talk a little bit about connecting the fifth cycle goals and policies to the sixth cycle.
Thank you, Marnie. I'll be brief. I just want to mention that together with staff, we're evaluating the effectiveness of all the current policies, and we're incorporating new state laws. So as we move forward, some of the programs and policies and goals that you see will be familiar, others will be new. As we go through and measuring the effectiveness, determine whether we modify, delete, or add new programs and policies. And we really want we want to include the voices of those who have not been part of the policymaking process in the past. Not only do we want that to be the case, but we also are learning, well, we understand that from the state that is a requirement. So we'll be working with employees who work within the community, making sure that their voices are heard and that their needs are reflected in our draft policies as we move forward. Thank you, Marnie.
Great, thank you, Andy. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. So we want to know your thoughts on our goals, policies, and programs, and any questions you might have. We have some forms here tonight. You're welcome to leave us written comments if you'd like. Again, please check out our website. Leave ideas there as well. But we are here this evening to hear from you and to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks. Okay, is that it, Marnie?
That's it.
All right, well, great. Thank you, Marnie. Thanks for keeping it brief, and it was a good team effort by all. So we'll open it up to public comment. As we said before, if you have a question about the Senate, the bills, or these types of things, it's best to go to Jay or ask Mayor Potter, because he does have his finger on the pulse of that. Tonight, we'll try to answer your questions as best we can. If not, we'll surely write them down and get back to you with them. And you can bet we can definitely write down all the suggestions and ideas that you have. So with that, please come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes to speak, and I'd love to hear your ideas. Gerard? Yeah.
My name is Gerard Rose. I'd like to begin by saying it's remarkable what the staff has done in a fairly short time. I attribute a lot of that to Chip, who I think is the most talented person we've got in city government. Certainly, I've represented many cities over the years as an attorney, and he's about as good as it gets. I want to thank, and of course, Karen, I think she was almost 20 years, in the planning business. And Bobby, I personally was the biggest advocate when you ran for city council, because I thought you were not only able, but more than that, and you've done a great job here, and I want to thank you. The remarks I'm going to make are going to be quick, but I do think they need to be made. First of all, I praise the planner for naming this project Housing Opportunities Made Easier. The problem is, I think it probably should be named Housing Opportunities Impossible, or if not impossible, certainly difficult. The problem is, the basic problem is we've got competing mandates. One of the mandates we have from the state of California is the Order 9510, which basically says, you folks have got no more water, stop it, just stop it. Which means if somebody wants to add a bathroom, or, God help me, why would they add a bathroom? Or if somebody wants to build a new home and they need water for it, they can't get it. It's, I could give you a legion of examples. It just happened to Paula Hasdevac, who was one of my colleagues on the city council for many years. She spent 6 months trying to get a permit to build her house, And she's finally getting one, apparently, but that was because they had a water allocation built in. We have no more water, so that's one mandate. The other mandate is the new AMBAG mandate. And the question, obviously, is where do we get 349 new units? Where do we get them? We can't, if we don't have water, we can't build them. It doesn't make any difference, how you slice it or dice it. No water, no construction. And this includes no water in some of the commercial buildings. There have been projects produced or proposed over the years. When I was on council, we talked about giving people access to some of the underground streams and rivers that flowed underneath our village. But we weren't allowed to do it. But that was a way of getting water, and that might have been an opportunity, and you might look into it again. We did, and we couldn't find it. What I'm troubled by is nothing that the city council did. I think you guys have done a great job, but some of the alternatives come up by our consultants, and you heard it in the film that was played here at the beginning. Well, let's turn strip malls into homes. Well, my youngest daughter, who's going to architectural school, that's her passion. She wants to turn strip malls into residential areas, but we don't have strip malls here in Carmel. We tried. I was on the Fort Ord Reuse Authority for many years, and we tried to get Fort Ord to make homes available out there. And if you've been out to East Garrison, I'll just say, take a ride out there and ask yourself, do you want Carmel to look like East Garrison? I don't think so. Many mansions, on top of each other in the middle of nowhere. It's troubling. It's troubling. So we have, the long and short of it is, I think we've got some serious challenges. I don't like the fact that everything's so expensive that my kids and grandkids can never live here. That's not good. I don't like the fact that we've got, one of my clients is the Cypress Inn, and everybody working at the Cypress Inn has to drive from Soledad or King City. That's a terrible drive. But where are we going to put them? I don't know where to put them, and I don't know how to pay for what they need to pay in order to live here. It's just that's why I say housing opportunities impossible. So, I'd love to work with you. Bobby Richards reached out for me today, and we discussed this. He's got some ideas. He's a very smart guy, and I hope that he can sell what needs to be sold here. But we've got to make some major changes to the way we do business, and I think we have to recognize as soon as possible that we have to address the basic problems we've got. Inconsistent mandates from the state of California, the face of, we're faced with litigation. Nobody wants to litigate. Oh, maybe I do since I'm a lawyer, but we've got terrible problems, and I would like this committee to reach out to Dave Potter, because he's a smart guy too, and let's see if we can't get some solutions that make sense.
Thanks, Char.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Brandon, I think we need a timer on that. You want a timer? Yeah, we're going to do 3 minutes if we have time extra, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk.
It will be only about a minute and a half. Good evening. I'm Tim Toomey, Carmel resident, and also a member of the Carmel Residents Association Board of Directors. So at our last meeting, we discussed this, and we took a poll among the Board of Directors, and what we would like to do is make this recommendation to you. In parallel with the housing element preparation, the Carmel Residents Association Board of Directors encourages the ad hoc committee's recommendation to the City Council for support of the land use proposed ballot measure. It's a draft ballot measure. The name is Brand Mendoza Kendall Tripartisan Land Use Initiative, to ensure that zoning and land use authority stays with the local government entities where the residents reside. This supports local government in addressing housing plans through solutions that address the unique needs and conditions of their community. If anyone questions the need for this ballot initiative, know that there are and continue to be state laws in place that usurp local control. Their one-size-fits-all approach must be redirected to support the diversity in California's 482 cities and over 40 million residents. Local government, when done right, is the best form of democracy precisely because it is closest to home. Formally supporting this ballot measure will provide all California voters increased local authority and restores local land use, planning, and zoning authority to cities. So I have a sample of the resolution and a draft copy of the ballot measure with me. I'll leave them with you, maybe with Marnie here. And you can have somebody review those. And they were put together by a group called our Neighborhood Voices, which is a grassroots organization representing quite a few jurisdictions. They have support from 114 California community leaders and 40 California communities. So we formally request the City Council participation in this resolution and support of this important ballot measure. And while I'm up here, I have another question regarding resolutions. I was just wondering, do you have any updates on the California Cities for Local Control resolution that was recommended for adoption at Tuesday's City Council meeting? So I just wanted to throw that out there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. And I can answer that question pretty quickly because the mayor and I did have an agenda setting meeting this morning, and something to that tune will be on May 2nd's City Council meeting. Well, it's not the place here because we're trying to build these 349 opportunities. That will be discussed at next month's City Council meeting. Thank you.
Hi, Carol Hall. I have a couple of questions. Just first to say that I support CRA and Tim Toomey's presentation that he just gave about the ballot measure. And the first question I have is, in this plan that's to be submitted in December or before December, do we have to account for all 349 units, or can we just kind of generally give ideas on where things might go, or ideas that we have that we've floated already, or do we actually have to count the number of units? We do. Okay, that's the first question. Second question is, how did Marin and Montecito get out of this? Anybody know?
I think the counties. Something to do with, I read something on Montecito, because who lives there?
Of who lives there?
Why don't,
No,
go ahead, Carol. Go ahead and after your comments, we'll take notes, and then we can address them after your comments.
Thank you.
Actually, Montecito is part of Santa Barbara County. It is not a separate city, so the county determines where they're going to put their housing in Santa Barbara County, just as Monterey County will decide where their 3,000 plus units will go. And the same with Marin County.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want me to respond to the other question?
Would you like to do it right away?
Yeah, I can kind of.
Yeah,
yes.
that'd be great.
So we do have to specifically identify sites that have capacity for at least 349 units. Whether or not, if we estimate 10 units on one particular site, if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But as long as we can show the state that site has the potential to accommodate that number of units, they will accept that. Of course, the caveat is water aside.
Thank you.
I have a question along that, Marnie. So we talked about the hotels a little bit. So what if we did raise the cap on our hotel stock and said that we'll now have 1,200 hotel rooms available? And so that would give us basically 200 hotel rooms that we could give to hotels right now. Would that identify as 200?
They're not living units.
No, if the only way they could build another hotel room is if they turned one of their old hotel rooms into an affordable unit. Would that count?
So we would do the analysis on that, and we would present that to the state. It certainly would help to have some property owner interest, so to have some sites in mind where property owners with hotels would be interested in that type of program. And then we can incorporate that into the housing element as an actual program that we would pursue over the next 8 years.
Great, thank you.
Neil.
Neil Cruz. I'm new to this. You guys really a great job. By the way, I do agree that you put all this together, and you're making it accessible and easy for the residents to participate. So really good. Why? Because we have to do this. I started reading about how you can be penalized legally, how you can be sued if you don't perform according to state regs. Because I wanted to see what you guys are seeing. I want to see it from your standpoint. Got to do it. 29 cities already getting heat from the state of California, and man, they are destroying the city that has decided to stand up for them, just like a thug would do. I don't see this as regular government, you guys. I see this as very controlling and a government that is taking away local rights. I believe that when I looked at the punitive measures that they can use against you if you do not perform, one of them is they can take away your rights to do permits. So you can no longer issue your own building permits if you don't perform. There's the builder's remedy option. If you're not good, then the builders can, and they take away a great deal of the regulations, do whatever you want. So every penalty is if you don't conform to the plan and do it right, we're going to take away even more of your control and then make it even worse. So we got to do the plan, and I think we all need to accept that. But I'm wondering, can't we do anything to fight this, you guys? This is atrocious. I mean, if somebody came into Carmel and said, I'm going to put 349 homes into Carmel and it's still going to be wonderful, and we wouldn't even let him finish his conversation. And because it's the state, it's the state, and we always want to do what the government tells us to. And so when you have a bully, at some point, you have to give him resistance or he will keep going. And this is what I see as this is kind of the strategy that the state is taking. They're rearing their ugly head. Don't you even dare question this. The more people that come after them, the more people will fall in line to fight this. Can't we at least have a second line here with the city to resist this? By the way, Bob, I don't think anybody's going to get sued for talking bad about it. But doing bad about the plan, you can get damaged. I don't know. As I say, I'm new to it. Very complicated. Thanks, you guys. And wow, we have so much to do. That's the other thing. All this stuff, all being piled on at the same time. You want time to think these things out, like you guys are doing. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Neil, I want to ask you, do you live downtown in an apartment?
Yes, I do, Karen.
And it's pleasant, isn't it?
It's wonderful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm David O'Neill. I'm a full-time resident. I'm also a real estate investor in 3 different states and also in France. And I just wanted to kind of put something, well, first of all, I want to say I support you and I'm going to do everything I can to personally help you in this process.
Thank you very much.
But I just want to say there's a concern that I have because some people have been saying that we have to just go through the motions, just do this process and come up with this verbiage, and then we don't actually have to do it. But I just want to say I've talked over with my husband, my business partner as well, and we've talked about, how would this affect our interest in investing? And it would really be very financially interesting for us to have these kind of things changed. The kind of things that we're talking about in the housing element analysis. So that's what I'm talking about. And then also Megan Kirby, the Deputy Director of Housing Policy, stated, a housing element is no longer a paper exercise. So I thought we should keep that in mind as we move forward. Just a few thoughts on the housing element analysis. The idea of using some of our taller buildings as an excuse to build 3-story buildings, I think is a bad idea. I really hope that we can avoid that. Also, we really want to be careful not to ignore the parking issues, because it's not going to be just an issue for all of us who are already here, but also the new people who are going to be living in these new facilities, and also the economy that it would affect as well. Let's see. I wanted to just mention something about commuting. I used to commute 2 hours each way to work, and that was ridiculous. And it was miserable, and I hated it, and I didn't want to do it. But I loved where I lived, and I loved where I worked, so I did it. What we're looking at here, 25 miles or 32 minutes commute for most of our workers is not an unacceptable commute. That's a reasonable amount of commute from my point of view, and from the point of view of a lot of people that I've been talking to. They feel the same way. There was something I didn't quite completely understand about, they were talking about in some way doubling square footage. If they could do it, they could get all this extra housing out of it. And it read to me like if we could double our house sizes on each lot, then we could put duplexes or whatever. And that would be hugely economically damaging to the current owners. You know, all of us who invest here would be just devastated and lose potentially millions on each piece of real estate. So, and then the historic district that shows up on the maps, I'm a little bit new, so I'm not quite sure if that's something that's already been established, but I'd like to know if it's possible that if we're in the process of establishing it, if we can make it a little bit larger than just one block off of each, Ocean on each direction, if we could include some other areas, you know. In summing up, we'd like to discourage changing zoning, weakening design guidelines, changing height restrictions, allowing objective criteria, streamlining review process, and offering parking waivers. But we'd like to encourage from this report ADU planning assistance, water credit resourcing, inventory and communication with the owners of commercial properties that could be heightened, spot zoning for certain areas perhaps.
What was that, David?
Spot zoning, so you just basically say this one particular property can be rezoned, you know, so not a whole area.
I couldn't hear the word.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I thought you said pot zoning.
Oh, well, there's that too. There's also some properties, somebody was telling me about a gymnasium at Mission that we could maybe reuse, rebuild, some stuff like that. So we'll try to keep you updated on those ideas on the website, which is great. That's a fantastic idea to keep everybody in the loop.
David, I think we're going to have to get it wrapped up pretty quick. But,
okay.
But these are great ideas. I'm loving it. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to come to the podium.
Yeah.
And I think you submitted that, right, in a letter?
I did, but I don't know who's participating that didn't get it through the email that I sent.
Okay.
Okay.
But all these can be uploaded, correct?
Okay. Just one more idea that I think is interesting is an elder care facility, maybe something that has very small units. We can get a lot of units out of it, and we need some elder care facilities. And all the people we talk to understand we got to work on it, but please let's do something to not find ourselves in this position again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I will mention while you said that this opportunity to be involved in the 2040, the seventh element, this is sort of, I think, in my terms, an autopsy of the sixth element in a way, and what worked, what didn't work, what surprised people, and how the state can do a better job in the seventh element so that we don't go through the same things, the same surprises, and so on. So I do urge you to get involved with that. Like Marnie said, the survey is a little wonky, but do your best.
Yeah, I took the survey as well. I'm glad they had places for comments.
Nancy Toomey here. Thank you again for all of your efforts and great website. I actually have a couple of questions about the website. One is, will the website have a place where the list of potential target locations is on it, the website, so that we could also comment on those locations if we have specific feelings, or will it be kind of just a holistic list and then you have to comment on a specific property kind of disjointly? So there's just a question on the logistics there, or suggestion. I would ideally like to see each one of them listed, and then you could comment on the specific sites. So that would be my preference. And then obviously we've got the Econ Northwest initial report, and wanted to know where in the process are we to expand the list of target locations beyond what was in that report? Because clearly I think, Marnie, you had stated that their focus was really the core of downtown. But there's more opportunity than that. So would like to know, is the EMC team going to be doing that, or how do we add those to the list that is a part of the process? So those are a couple of questions. Because we also, talked in some of these meetings about, again, keeping a full roster of the different places that are targets. And so we'd like to all be able to see where that is, and if they've been ruled out for a reason, all good. I mean, that happens. So I understand that could be a part of the case, and or it's for a later cycle or whatever it is. My last point is on this rezoning versus zoning ordinance, that an early on presentation slide that you did, if I've got the words right. As you said, rezoning changes the colors from one to another. Would an example of changing a zoning ordinance be saying in the R1 it now can be a fourplex, so you can actually change the description of what is R1 into like a fourplex that is a part of something that's possible with SB9 stuff and other stuff that's coming from the state. So I just wanted to understand, when you talk about those two concepts, I get the color change on the zoning. I don't know that I really understand what you mean by the zoning ordinance change. So I would like some clarifications on that. That would be great. Thanks.
Great ideas.
I think the actual terminology is zoning code. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So there's the zone, you're changing the zoning on the zoning map, which is, think of that as the more intense change. So that's the one that usually gives people the most consternation, is you're changing the zoning, which is the underlying allowed land use. What's the big picture of what's allowed there? So think your residential one versus your multifamily versus your central commercial. Those are the zoning districts. So that's the color on the map that we keep saying. The zoning code is the Title 17, the chapters of our municipal code that talk about land use. And so the zoning code update is where you would find things like just one-off changing, you get a density bonus for a certain thing. That would be a zoning code update. So to your question, Nancy, about the allowing multifamily in the R1, that would technically be a zoning code. If that's the only change, if you just wanted to say in the R1 now multifamily is allowed, that would be a change in the zoning code. We'd put that in there. But that's a pretty, that's closer to something like a big zone change, because the multifamily is what's allowed in the multifamily zoning district. So you start getting into bigger land use thing with that. So that's the difference. I mean, you would start asking the question, well, do we just want to change those sections of R1 to multifamily zoning? We don't know, but it kind of helps to put those in two different camps, that the zoning change, the colors on the map, is the more intense. You're intensifying the land use basically by doing that, versus a zoning code update where you're just picking little tweaks to how we regulate and allow certain things to happen. They can overlap for sure, but that's a simple way to look at it, is zoning change is more intense than zoning code update.
Great, thank you.
Brandon, didn't we have a zoning code change sort of recently when it came to trash cans? We used to count them, if somebody built a little trash can enclosure, it was counted against their square footage.
Right. That's an example. Yeah.
Right?
That's an example of a zoning code update. Or, when we changed some of the regulations about our signs,
right.
Those are zoning code type of updates.
So zoning code changes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, sometimes we want to go no zoning change. But if we do look at Sunset North, that would require a zoning change because it is zoned cultural something or other. So
it's zoned
the color
blue.
changes.
So,
Yeah.
some, and I don't know, perhaps the two-star hotel idea, that might also change what it's allowed now as, houses, hotel rooms for rent. If that became like one hotel was changed to all living units versus renting for tourist units, that might also trigger a zoning change. So I think what we're all going to try to do is get very familiar with the terms and what the terms mean, so that we don't think we're doing one thing and we're doing something else.
And I think one thing to just keep in mind for the public, and I've heard the ad hoc committee say this and the city council say this, and this is as staff too, and working with our partners, we're trying to find the least intrusive, least impactful way to do this. And so if we're trying to find ways to accomplish the goal of meeting this state level by zoning code type of updates, we really don't want to have to change colors on the map. If we don't, that's not where we started. We think we can actually get there with just zoning code type of updates. There may be onesie twosies like Councilmember Filito is talking about with the Sunset Center, and that's akin to what Mr. O'Neill said when he came up. That's technically called spot zoning, when you change the zoning of one parcel. We have some other tools in our tool belt as planners that are technical and nerdy, and I could talk about forever, but things like a specific plan. You can do a specific plan on a piece of property that allows something to happen there that isn't otherwise allowed in the zoning district. It's essentially a rezone, but it just has a different name. But rest assured, I mean, that's all of our stated goal is to take the least intense route to meet the goals of what the state has asked us to rise to, meaning that we're going to try our best not to have any broad swath zoning changes. Why don't you come up? Can you come up to the mic, Gerard? Thank you.
Yes, you have to follow the rules, please.
Gerard Rose. I just want to point out that spot zoning is almost an invitation to litigation. It's one of the most frequently litigated land use actions taken by a public entity, and I don't think you want to go there if you can possibly avoid it. Okay.
Often that's why we have tools like specific plans.
Great. Thanks for the information, Gerard. I appreciate that.
And David, I wanted to respond to one thing where you said this is just a paper exercise. Yes, we're doing a paper exercise in that we're identifying on paper and through a plan, a process, but we would certainly hope that this does come forward through incentives or whatever, with some meaningful housing out of this, because frankly, we need to do that just to help revitalize our community in some ways. You know, to bring more full-time people in here would be kind of wonderful. And we don't want it to just be a paper exercise at this point. We'd really like to see this come to fruition. Because the goal of California when they did this, they didn't do this to ruin towns and to make everybody have heartache and everything. They did this because they really would like everyone in California to have the opportunity to have a home, some place to live, some place that they can be safe. And so I think if we keep that in mind, and how we came up with 349 is there's 33,000, I think, units allocated to our county. And those had to be parceled out like different pieces of pie to our cities and to our unincorporated areas. So everyone in California, every city, every county is expected to do their part to try to solve the problem of the missing 2.5 million houses that we need in California. So let's keep our eyes open, our hearts open, and our minds open to really meaningful and creative ways to do this. And we've already heard many good ideas tonight, so that's really encouraging to me.
And let's keep them going. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Stephen Engblom. I am a homeowner and first time at this process, so thanks for the opportunity to speak. And I wanted to say that I agree with what was just said. I'm proud to live in a state that's taking on these environmental issues and affordability and housing issues. So I think that's important to remember that we're all, California's doing this for an important reason, and I'm proud to own a home in a city that's participating in this and a community that's participating in it. And just had two suggestions. I was reading an article last month in an Orange County newspaper about the RENA process, and they were giving grades to communities that are participating in this, and I thought it might be an interesting idea to talk to some communities that are similar to Carmel that are going through this process. Like, I was struck by, in the article they mentioned like St. Helena, Calistoga, Mill Valley, Hillsborough, all sort of Northern California communities that are doing this. So it might be interesting to get a couple sound bites from them and see if they have some suggestions for our community. And then also, I was impressed by the preliminary, or the report from January from Eco Norwest and the whole inventory of sites. Even just looking at the central community or central core, it's pretty impressive how the land with 33 units per acre or 40 units per acre could accommodate what we need to do. But even as I'm an architect and a planner, and even with that background, it's often hard to understand what that looks like. And
yes.
So it might be really helpful in some of the upcoming meetings to have some examples of what that kind of density looks like, so it doesn't scare people, you know, and that we can all see that, you know, some of the historic buildings we have might actually fall into what that density would look like. So thank you.
Thank you. Those are very good ideas, specifically about the sharing some ideas of what it might look like. Some, I believe, in our design traditions in the commercial area, Nori Winter is going to show, Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Brandon, he is going to show what some of the buildings might look like downtown if they went from 1-story to 2-story.
Not quite.
Not quite?
We're more talking about what does the volume look like? Not 1-story and 2-story, but like what's a mass or a volume, sort of like a maximum potential volume. But I think we can actually give some real life examples.
I think we have real life example with Trevitt Court.
Yeah, Trevitt Court, the John Lewis building.
I don't know what the density was there, but
yeah, we'll bring some of those and put that's a really good idea. Put the density up on the screen and say this is what 42 units per acre looks like on a 4,000 or 8,000 square foot lot. I
need to step back just for a second. Nancy, did you get your questions answered? You want to?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah, I'd like to answer the question related to the sites inventory. It's a good question. So how was that built? Various different ways and lots of information. So the fifth cycle, we look at what's in the fifth cycle, what's still available, what wasn't constructed on. So you can look, there's a map there. Also working with staff and seeing if anyone has come forward and identified sites just through the planning and development process that may be an opportunity. Also, you saw on that website the property interest form, so soliciting current property owners that may be interested, have them reach out to the city and have them part of this process, and also meetings like this for people to reach out and identify sites. And Marnie was saying that the next meeting in May will be talking more in depth about the sites inventory. And yes, this information, the sites identified and being able to comment will be up on the website when it's available.
Was that all the questions? Were they all answered?
I believe so.
I think, Nancy, was that it? That's what I had on my list too. Yeah. Okay.
You know, Gerard left, but he made mention of the State Water Resources Board and HCD and this seeming impasse here in Monterey County. And I believe the city of Monterey actually made a plea to the State Water Resources Board to please give us some water, open this up. And I think at the time they were unsuccessful. However, now that we have a lot more water in our reservoirs and so on and so forth, and California is out of its drought, doesn't mean that Monterey County has any more water yet, but as you all read the paper, there is an interest in buying Cal-Am that has been announced just this week, and this is an 8-year cycle, so hopefully sometime during this 8 years, if the planning is already in process and permitted and water does come online, then there would be projects ready to go. And the other thing is we might consider all of the Monterey County cities joining hands and going to the State Water Resources Board together rather than individual cities and saying, give us some relief if you want some housing built. Or at least get HCD talking to the State Water Resources Board so we can get through that impasse.
Is there anybody else out there that would like to comment before we go out to Zoom? Is there anybody in Zoom world?
If you're out on Zoom and you want to speak, if you're on your computer, you can click the bottom left and unmute yourself and go ahead. Or if you're on your phone, *6, you can unmute yourself. Not seeing any hands go up. We only have a small handful of folks out there that aren't, perhaps with the city or with the EMC. But
is there anybody here in the audience that needs a follow-up question? Or, we have time, so is there anybody that wants to get something clarified? Or
Tim Toomey. So I was thinking, this question came up about the Red Cross building. Somebody said that it was the Red Cross is moving out, and so that building is on our target list or whatever we're calling it. So I'm just wondering if those areas that we say, okay, this is what we really want to target. Is there some way that we can kind of keep an eye on the activity around those? So if one is sold, I'm not sure there's anything we can do, but that we have an opportunity maybe to talk to a developer or owner, at that time to see, if they could accommodate it for our purposes.
So I can speak to that if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So that one, it's interesting you bring that one up specifically, Tim, and this is part of the reason when we do these housing element type of thing, we try to get the community involved as much as possible because everyone has connections. You have connections. Everyone out there has different connections. So if you hear of something, let us know. The Red Cross is a great example. Actually, someone did come to me and said, hey, the Red Cross building is potentially going up for sale. So I have reached out to the director of the Red Cross here locally, and there was another third party locally that manages affordable housing for seniors that's interested potentially in working a deal to take that site. So we are trying to broker those deals as much as we can. So if anyone hears of something that's coming available, let us know and we'll do what we can to connect those dots.
Keep our ears open.
Let me tell you that is such a great site because its neighbor is the Legion.
Exactly.
And if the Legion would be willing to work with the Red Cross for
affordable housing,
vets,
possibly.
It would be a really positive situation
thanks.
for us. Yeah.
Hi, I just had a question. How are we supposed to be responsible for the low income, middle income, and what do we do about that? I don't understand. If you could help, that would be great.
That's a really good question, and those are the units that are most difficult to construct and build and account for. So in your current fifth cycle, if you want to look at that, there's a variety of different land use tools to try to encourage smaller units that can be more affordable, or units constructed for people with special needs. And then there's also a lot of programs. So there's a programmatic aspect to it as well, working with county housing authorities to put people in touch with voucher programs, or working with affordable housing developers that may have units coming online. So there's a lot of programmatic items that are currently in the fifth cycle that we will be looking at and exploring on how we can either better connect people to those resources, because a lot of times people just don't know that they're available. So that's a really big thread in this sixth cycle as well, is publicizing the resources that are available for people that are in very low and moderate income levels, because there are programs available. So doing a lot of publication of them. And again, if you have ideas of how to work with other nonprofits or connections with other nonprofits for programs, is there something the city can do? This is a small city, so that might be challenging, but that's out there as well. In terms of programs and assistance the city can provide. And that's in addition to looking at the types of housing needs that are needed, like seniors have been brought up, or vets, and maybe single-headed households, and trying to target how to build those types of units. And that a lot of that is putting nonprofits together with sites that become available, and then looking at financing options. But It's it is difficult, it's been challenging, and it's challenging for many cities and jurisdictions throughout the state to hit those numbers, but that's where we're seeing a great need, and that's, you know, partially why the homeless population is increasing too, because there aren't a lot of units in those lower income categories that are affordable. And once you lose your housing, it can be very challenging to get back in.
This might interest you as well, David. So I just got back from DC, where I met with some of our representatives there. And one of the challenges I think that as a developer you would have is a very low income unit. You cannot make more than $27,000 a year. That's for a very low income unit. Well, if you make $15.50 an hour and you work 40 hours a week, you're making $33,000 a year. So not even a minimum wage worker would qualify for one of these units. And so these numbers have to be adjusted for our area because, well, and at least in my opinion, because it really sets a low threshold for the developer, because he's going to build say a 300 square foot unit, but he has to rent it to somebody that makes under $27,000 a year. So maybe they need to raise that, but that's right. So that's just another thing that we have to look at and consider.
Anastasia, maybe you could talk to, we had a brief conversation about some of these very low units, who they would be available for. And I think you mentioned some people with disabilities, some people just on one little Social Security check a month.
Yeah, in looking at, so we will be doing a housing needs assessment. And again, that was done for your 5th cycle. So you can take a look at that. And one of the requirements is looking at these special needs groups. And people with disabilities are generally a large portion of the population that falls into these very low, extremely low income categories for a variety of reasons. If you have different types of disabilities, or if you are an elderly senior with limited income. So I encourage you to look at the housing needs assessment. But yes, there is a large group, and just seeing it through some of the more of the analysis that has been done in previous housing elements that have come before Carmel. So the Bay Area, they're a little further ahead. Marin County's a little further ahead. And again, if you look at their housing needs assessments for their special needs groups, people with disabilities are commonly the largest group that fall into this very low and low income. So that's something to consider and think about. And I think veterans may fall into that group too, because there's a lot of cross issues there.
Is there anybody else that would like to comment, or anybody? No? Melanie? No?
No, I just have a couple of questions.
Come on up. This is the place to ask them.
I guess so. Melanie Billig, thank you all very much for opening this meeting up. I think it's very, very helpful, and I know that community members really appreciate it. What is the builder's remedy? People talk about that. I'd like somebody to really explain that to me.
Brandon, who wants to take it?
And then also, Brandon, where are we on the ADU ordinance? Aren't we doing something about that?
Do you want me to? I can answer
can,
this.
I mean,
you can field both of them.
So that's another thing. And then Marnie mentioned when she was talking about the 6th cycle, she was talking about some creating some special programs or whatever, and that was very unclear to me. So if, Marnie, if you could explain
an
that.
example, you would like an example?
Brandon. More about how these cycles are connected. I mean, how is it if we haven't made our past allocation, that's rolled into the next cycle?
If you want, I can answer. I think I can do all those. I think I can do it. I
can.
think I can name
know
that.
you
I
can
can name that tune in 2 notes.
Is that it, Melanie? Do you have any other?
No. I think that'll be good for now.
Okay, I'll start, and then the fabulous team across the dais here can jump in if or when I miss something. So I'll start with how the cycles are connected. That's an often heard question, and it's a very good one because it's such a convoluted process. But the short answer is, whatever we were allocated for this last cycle that we don't meet, it doesn't roll over. It starts anew. Yeah. So we're starting fresh in this new cycle. 349 is our number. We definitely didn't meet our RENA goals for this last one. We got all of the above moderate, which is great. But the low and very low that we didn't get, those just effectively go away. The new number is the new number. So it's not additive, so we don't have to worry about that. The 6th cycle programs and incentives that we were talking about, that sort of keys off of the last conversation we were having that Mr. O'Neill brought up in a way is, what are we going to do about this, or how do we actually fix this? So if you look at what I just talked about in the 5th cycle, how we were not able to meet all of our RENA goals, especially in those low and very low where we got 0 units, it's an indicator that those incentives and programs that we put in place for the 5th cycle were not enough to entice private developers to build affordable units, because those affordable units do have to be deed restricted, meaning they can only get a certain amount of rent for those units. So in order for a private developer to build those affordable units to fall in one of those low or very low buckets, we have to come up with better incentives, make it more tasty for a developer to come in, and maybe that means more floor area, maybe that means additional density, maybe that means waiving permit fees. Councilmember Richards has had some creative ideas with respect to hotel rooms and additional units when you convert hotel
And
rooms.
Maybe it includes raising the rates of it.
Right, exactly. So we recognize that to get things developed, we live in a capitalistic society. I mean, that's a reality. And so in order for something to be able to be built that's going to be affordable, there has to be an incentive on the other side to offset that affordability. So that's the answer to that question, Melanie, is these programs and incentives are really meant to do that. And we recognize that the 5th cycle wasn't enough. So we're looking for more creative solutions to ratchet those incentives and programs up to hopefully generate that production that we really wanted. With respect to the ADU ordinance, it's actually in draft right now. So I've been working on it with one of my planning staff and our city attorney. We currently have an ADU ordinance. The city has one, but it's not updated to meet the state's updated regulations that came over the period of 2016 to 2020. So we are in the process of updating it. It's just in the list of things that we're working on. It's very close to being able to come to the Planning Commission for a first review for public. So we'll march that out and get a lot of good public feedback on that, because certainly ADUs are part of the solution here for housing. I mean, the state has recognized that ADUs can be part of your solution. And if you craft an ordinance or policies in your housing element update as well, if you craft an ordinance or new policies that make it even easier or more enticing for people to build ADUs, then you can assume as part of your housing element update, it's likely you can assume that those are going to be part of your solution. So we want to figure out a way to make ADUs work in the village.
Brandon, can I stop you just for a moment and ask you, though, is it possible for us to demand that any ADU that's introduced to our city has some sort of a deed restriction on what they can rent it for? Because it's easy for us to meet our market rate rentals. Mm-hmm. Is it possible for us to put that?
I think the answer is the simple answer is probably no. You just wouldn't see the creation of them. But we do know that the ABAG region, which is the region north of us, so we're AMBAG, there's ABAG, all these bags are on stage. They're basically your council of government. So ours is the AMBAG, Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. But ABAG, who went before us, we talked earlier about how these 8-year cycles are offset in different regions. They went before us, and they worked with the state, and the state signed off on the concept that ADUs, so let's say over the last 8 years, the city had 100 ADUs that were built. We know that, we can track that. If we estimate in our plan that over the next 8 years, another 100 will be built, we can count those. Those are basically, whether they're deed restricted or not, and a certain percentage in ABAG was 30% very low, 30% low, And so it's 30, 30, 30, 10, all the way up to above market rate. That's only 10% of that. So those other 90% automatically would count. So our region is going to continue to work with Sacramento and try to get the same essentially policy deal that ABAG got to be able to count ADUs. So at that point, then we don't even have to worry about deed restricting them. They'll count towards our affordability numbers, which is what we're really hoping comes true. And we saw that happen in ABAG. So we feel pretty comfortable with that, but it's not in the books 100% yet.
Yeah, and I'll just add that there was a study done in the Bay Area on affordability of accessory dwelling units to justify this allocating 30% and very low, 30% low, 30% moderate, and 10% above moderate, because it showed that many times these accessory dwelling units are for a family member that is maybe an adult child and they're not charging rent, or maybe it's a disabled family member not charging rent, or an elderly parent not charging rent. So there's a lot of legitimate reasons, and sometimes as well, private property owners will keep rents lower in units on their property if they have a good tenant, because they want to reduce tenant turnover. They don't function like a property management company. So there is a study that was done to support that.
No, they seem to be low income by design. I think they're great, so that's wonderful.
And then, so last question, I think I'm on a roll here, is what is the builder's remedy? The builder's remedy is, we talked about in one of our other meetings, what are the ramifications of not adopting a housing element? What's the penalty for failing the task, basically, that the state has asked us to rise to? Well, one of those is that then the city is subject to the builder's remedy, and this is one that gets a lot of press. The law has actually been around for quite some time, but it's much more prevalent now with what's going on with people trying to shirk their responsibilities with housing. So effectively what it is it gets the city completely out of the way of being able to regulate any sort of development. When a builder comes in and meets certain criteria for certain projects, it's basically approved. The city has no control over design, location, density, for the most part. And so it is what it says to be. It's the builder's remedy for a city not rising to the challenge of creating a plan. So we keep talking about the reason for us doing all this work is because if we are successful in adopting a housing element that the state signs off on, we get to keep that control. That's why we need to do a good job of this, because then we get to keep the control. So we got to do it. It's going to happen either way. So let's do it so that the state signs off on our plan. That way we keep that local control.
And let's do it with as much public participation as possible.
One thing that is clear to me, and I'm on the Regen board and I'm on the AMBAG board, and we have loads of acronyms, and it would be good to add an acronym page to our website so that we don't throw these things out like RENA and this and that and everything else. And the other thing would be thing like builder's remedy is SB 35, SB 9 is something else, SB 10 is something else. A short explanation of what those things are for people who are getting involved so that they can be in on the correct terminology and we're all speaking somewhat the same language when we're in these meetings. But that was a good question, Melanie, and I'm happy you answered it ask it because Brandon could explain that a little bit. SB 35 is something that we really do want to avoid. And by doing the work we're doing now, we're going to keep our local control. So that's our goal, is to do the right thing, have a good housing element that produces some units, as many as we hope people want to support, and also keep our control right here in Carmel.
Is that it? Is there anybody else that would like to? Melanie?
Sure.
You've used up all your questions for the evening, Melanie. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You know I love you.
I heard this, and I have no idea where it came from, if it came from something at the council meeting or what, but somebody threw out a number of 1,000, that if we don't do our current allocation, that somehow we were going to be faced with 1,000 units. Did any of you hear that?
No.
No.
I heard that number. So, well, that's great. I think that's really important because we don't want things like that flying around right
What
now.
you could have heard was, there was one point we talked about, if we fail to get our housing element updated, there's financial penalties of $10,000 plus per
No,
day.
no. This was something about $1,000 that in the, excuse me,
1,000 units.
dollars. Something about at the next cycle that we were going to be looking at 1,000. And I have
don't
no
think so.
concept of where that came
Does
from.
anybody have an
or why.
idea of what the next cycle is even going to be?
No, but what you're describing sounds vaguely familiar. So I think I might have
Can
seen.
you search that out?
Absolutely.
Well, I think,
Absolutely.
no, I think I've heard that rumor, like the next cycle is going to be 1,200. I mean, but we
It
have
might have been
no way
a,
of knowing
it might have
that.
been a projection because
Yeah.
our increase this time was like 300%.
Right.
And I think someone might have been projecting out what 300% next time might be, so.
Well, I think we need to be really careful about that right now.
Well,
You
and I
know,
think
mean, we want only accurate figures out and no potential projections that might, create even more trauma in the village than we already are having.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering all the questions. I really appreciate it.
All right. Is that it, everybody? Nobody in Zoom? Okay.
Look at that,
guess-
15 minutes early.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for
work.
the participation. It was great. And see you next month.
Did you want these, Bobby? I printed them for you.